Hello, welcome students. This is Professor John Forsyth, and today we are going to look at using Kaggle and some advantages that Kaggle can have for us. But we'll proceed. So to start off, let's check out the Kaggle website. So if we just go to kaggle.com, and I'm actually logged in. So yeah, you can see there's several different things. We're going to look at data sets mostly today. But there's also competitions that let you compete in like data science challenges. And we'll briefly look at that as well. But to kind of give us a little outline, let's go to my VS Code and we'll just create a new file here in my exercises folder. And let's just call it Kaggle practice. Okay, and then so to give us an outline of what we're going to go over today, so we're going to show how to set up Kaggle. And then we will look at viewing data sets. And finally, we're going to look at how to open a Kaggle notebook. And then we'll take a brief look at competitions. Okay, so I have my terminal window open down here below, and so I'm going to be using that a lot. So let's expand that a little bit. If that's not open for you, you can, in VS Code, you can go to View and open the terminal right there. There's also a shortcut key, but either way. So to start off, I want to change some stuff. So I'm going to go to my home directory. By the way, I did make a video on using the command line that goes over some of the commands that I run. I know I've showed some of you personally how to run these, but it's useful. I go over some of the most useful ones in the YouTube lecture that I shared for our Monday kind of substitute for our Monday lecture. So anyways, I'm using CD to change directory. I go to my home directory using that tilde. And so when I'm in my home directory, I can list my files here using ls, enter, and I have a Kaggle folder. This is actually a folder. D stands for directory, which is synonymous with folder. So we have a Kaggle folder there, and that's going to come into play in fact, so actually it's going to come into play right now. So let's move something that I have in there. There's this kaggle.json file, and I'm going to move it to my current directory. So I'm moving it outside of the .kaggle folder or directory, but it's still it's right here. So that's what the dot means, is current directory. So now if I do a list, notice I had like these files at the bottom. And notice now at the very bottom I had Kaggle.json because right after I moved that. So now that Kaggle.json file is actually my what's called my API key, which is important. Okay. So we're going to want to install Kaggle, and I've already done it. So, but just to show you how to do that, sorry, that's a different thing. So pip install, that's what we're going for. Pip install Kaggle. Okay, and then that's going to do its work and install Kaggle. I've already installed it, so it says requirement already satisfied, um, along with all its dependencies like packages that it installs to support Kaggle. So let's use Kaggle. So let's say I want to get some help on Kaggle. I can do Kaggle-H, and it'll show me how I can use it, some different commands I can write. So usage, it's kind of like a little bit cryptic when you're not used to seeing these things, but these are just like I won't go over into how to read this other than, well, these are like different optional commands you can write after Kaggle. We're going to be using the data sets one. So let's look at that. Here's a better view of how to do that. So data sets, Kaggle followed by data sets, and then here's different things you can do after data sets. We can list data sets, etc. So, and after each thing, if you want to get more help, so data sets, for example, you can do -H, and it'll give you help on how to use Kaggle data sets. So these are different commands you can do after Kaggle data sets. You can do list, which I mentioned already. You can download a data set by specifying the name after. So, but let's list some data sets. So rather than going through all that documentation, I'll just give you a shortcut because I already know what we want to do here. So we can do Kaggle data sets, and we can do a -S to search for a data set by some name. So let's say we want to search for Spanish. Okay. Like data sets that have the word Spanish in them, English version of the word Spanish. So when I do that, I get this error. It says API authentication. Remember the tip that I've given before? Always look at the bottom of the errors. So here we have an OS error. Could not find Kaggle.json. Okay, well, yeah, we've dealt with that just recently. I gave you like preview as to why that's not working. But let's go and see how. So if we go to the setup, like how to set stuff up in Kaggle, it tells you in the documentation, and I've linked to that in our syllabus online. But I'm just gonna show you how to do it rather than going back and reading the documentation. So if we go to this hamburger menu, is what they call that sometimes. And actually, sorry, that's actually my browser. So I want to go to this link. It's like my profile link thing. And if I go to settings, then actually I want to go to my profile. So I click on your profile and on the, sorry, um, it's actually on the left here. So if I click on the public API, and I can read the getting started, but there should be, yeah, it looks like I will have to read the getting started because I forget. Okay, so we already did pip install and then authentication. This is where we want to follow the instructions here. There, as you're reading through this, if you do read this, there's always going to be like new vocabulary. It's like a little bit different of a language. A couple words or things that I picked out or terms that I think will be maybe confusing if you haven't dealt with this kind of stuff is, well, API. I've talked about that in class. It stands for Application Programming Interface. It's just how you like functions you can call or commands you can type, like in the command line interface that we were just using, to use some project like the Kaggle website and Kaggle data. So the API is just what you can, as a programmer or just a computer user, you can type to use their tools. And we use the command line interface tool. That's what CLI stands for by typing Kaggle. Kaggle is, notice that I installed it with pip install. So it is a Python package, but it's one that we run from the command line. Um, here's where this talks about Python binaries. So we talked about like binary numbers, et cetera, et cetera. But this is th what this means specifically here are like Python scripts or Python programs that you can run, which is what Kaggle is. It's a Python binary, and binary is IES plural. So that's what that's talking about. This Python home is an environment variable that you may or may not have set up. If you're on Linux, dot local folders. So notice this tilde, that's home. I use that as well. And when you're on VS Code, you're using PowerShell. If you ever need to like look up documentation on how to type commands here from this, notice there's a PS, Windows PowerShell. If you're on Mac or Linux, you're going to use some type of terminal, or on Mac, it's called the terminal program, and you can do a lot of these same, the commands will be similar. Again, I highly recommend watching my command line interface YouTube tutorial to learn some basic things it'll take you really far. It's really useful. So anyway, so basically what we want to do is let's read these instructions here to how to, no, that's not what we want. Pardon me. Gotta go back here. Here, we'll find it. It'll just take a few seconds here. So pretty sure it's in your profile, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go to settings. Here we go. Okay, so API, we want to use their API. We want to create a new token. So I can just click the number or click this button. Generating a new token will automatically expire any previous token. I would say continue. I've already done this, but basically it's going to give you a new token. You can save that, download it, and place it in your home directory. Um, that that documentation that I was just looking at shows you where to put it if you're on a Mac or Linux machine. But for Windows, it's going to go inside your home directory, which again you can get to by doing cd this tilde symbol should be the top left key or shift top left key on your keyboard for most people. And then if you do a listing there, you should see you probably won't have this if you haven't created it, this .kaggle folder, but you can create it by using make directory .kaggle, and that will make a directory or make a folder. And it already exists, so it gives me an error. Notice how it says .kaggle already exists right there. Okay, so all I need to do is move my kaggle.json file into that Kaggle folder or directory, and now I should be good. Notice or if you remember, I got an error last time I did this datasets command to search or do a list and -s to search for Spanish datasets. So now instead of getting an error, I actually get some results of some datasets. So let me expand this so we can kind of read our output here and see what we've got. And let me just check the time because I want to keep this to about 20 minutes. So we have lots of data sets, pretty interesting data sets. They all have the word Spanish in like this title. And it's a little bit difficult to read like this menu. So this wraps because my screen isn't wide enough to have it all on one line. If I expand it a little bit, it looks a little bit better. But basically this is one row and that row wraps here. These are all the headings of the rows and then like the underscores under those headings. So it's a little bit wonky. But so ref is our very first column. And that's basically the reference of the data set, like the official name of the data set, which you will use to either search for it on Kaggle, or if you wanted to download it, that's what you would use to download it to your local hard drive. Okay, so I'm not really interested in Spanish wine. I'm not interested in rail tickets pricing. There's 120 hours here of Spanish speech that could be really interesting for doing some speech recognition. But I want to look at this 120 million word Spanish corpus. That's what I'm interested in. So let's take a look at that. Here's the reference to it. So I'm going to save that. There's other information. It has like the size. Looks like this is 489 megabytes. And it gives you like how many downloads last month, something like that, different numbers that may or may not be interesting to you. So I've copied that. So now let's go to data sets on the Kaggle website. And so I am logged in. We're going to search. It shows that I've already searched for this, but so I'm going to search for that data set, and then it comes up with a couple top possible things I might be looking for. This is the one that I'm interested in. So click on that. And here we go. So one thing you're going to want to check out is this data card. And this will just give you a summary of the data to see if it's going to be useful to you for whatever problem or challenge you're trying to take on or solve. So let's see. This is Spanish is the second most widely spoken language on Earth. Just some basic information. So it's going to be 57 text files. They're in XML format according to this content. We can view some more of that. It has some other data sets that you might be interested in that are similar to this one. And if we scroll all the way down, we actually get a little sample of what this data set is going to look like. So sure enough, we have an XML tag starting with doc. That's the start tag. And then we have the content, some Spanish. I notice it doesn't print all these characters like perfectly. So there's some encoding issue going on here. But that's a brief look at the data sets, and it looks like it shows, yeah, the files here and the size of all of those files. So we can probably click on those and explore those. Haven't played with this too much, but one thing that's really useful if you don't want to have to worry about downloading these data sets, you just want to play with it online and see what you can do. There's this awesome option here called New Notebook. So this comes from like Jupyter Notebook. Kaggle will let you use their computing resources for free, so you don't have to even download these data sets. And so it gives me access to this data set. So, and it gives us some sample code. It just kind of has some like default code. It's assuming that you're going to want to do some NumPy math and some pandas to contain to manipulate and view the data. And this default code here will just it imports the built-in OS module, which allows you to do um, this walk command, which will allow you to do like a for loop over three different things. Anyways, basically what this is going to do without analyzing this code in detail, it'll print the full path to each file in this data set. So let's just go ahead and run that. It might take a minute here it starts up a session to kind of warm up the computer that they're using or the server to run my Kaggle notebook. So yeah, it's nice. I don't have to worry about installing NumPy and pandas. It's all here ready for me to go. So looks like that's finished. Okay, so here we have our 57 files that I mentioned before. So let's do some stuff with this. Let's just do the classic thing I've always done because we don't want to focus on the task so much as just using Kaggle notebooks, which is doing a count of words and putting them in a dictionary, just how frequent words we have, just to show exercise a little bit of our notebook. So first of all, I don't like using OS. It's still valid, but there's a new and improved way to list files. So from pathlib, which we've been using all semester, import path. And we're going to look at, so just to note, we need to go into this directory to get access to our files. So let's use that as our path. So copy that. And I'll just call it the corpus path. Then inside there's my Spanish 120 million word corpus. And now with our corpus path, we can actually do a loop over that of each individual file path. If we call a certain method called glob, and we're basically just going to look at every single file in there. So I can just do star, which means like match anything. Similar to regular expressions, slightly different. Then I need to do a colon, and let's just print information about our first file path, its name, and we'll just break out of the loop after that. So it's only going to loop one time. So what works in VS Code, doing control / will automatically comment that line out. So there's some keyboard shortcuts that are useful in this. I'm not going to use these, so I could comment that out. I'm just using this. Okay. So yeah, this isn't going to be too computationally intense. So let's just run that and list all our file names without the full path. So that's fine. But we can work with these files. Okay. So what I want to show you is you're going to run into errors and it's going to be frustrating. So the error that we're going to run into here, and just know that I'm giving you a little bit of a fake situation here because I'm telling you already the error you're going to run into. But it's going to be an encoding error. So we're assuming that our files are UTF-8, but in this case, they're not. So we're going to figure out, first of all, run into that problem and see how to solve it. So let's try to read some text here. Okay, so the text in each file will be file path. This time I am going to take out the break because I'm just testing here. I don't want to run it across all files. We just want to make sure we get it working with one, then it should work with all of them. So we're going to read text, which we get from path objects. And I'm going to assume the encoding, which I believe is the default. I'm pretty sure it is the default, is UTF-8. So just read that text, save it into TXT, and then print the first by doing a slice. We'll print the first 50 characters of that text and then break out of our loop. So just run this once. So let's see what error we get. So always go to the bottom. So we have Unicode error. Codec can't define. So this is 16 or hexadecimal numbers, which are 0 through F, but don't worry about that too much. Anyways, so the encoding's wrong. Okay, so there is a tool to detect what encoding a file is in. So all files, everything really saved on a computer ultimately is stored as ones and zeros. So we're trying to interpret this as the pattern of ones and zeros that UTF-8 defines to represent letters. And apparently that encoding, that pattern that UTF-8 uses is not correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to read the bytes. So that's just the raw ones and zeros of this file. So take out the encoding because it doesn't specify any encoding. So we're just going to get the raw ones and zeros. And if I want to make my code not confusing, if I end up saving this for a long time, let's name my variable something appropriately. So we're looking at text bytes rather than actual text. And in order to detect what text we're dealing with, we're going to do we're going to import char detector. So char det. Okay. And then after we get our bytes, this is going to give us a clue, a hint. Basically, it does some type of machine learning to tell us what it thinks these bytes are. And let's print the result of that. So we're just looking at one file because we're breaking at the bottom to break out of the loop. And we'll comment that out for now, that print. Okay, oops, I did save. So another fancy or nice keyboard shortcut, this will be Command on Mac, but on Windows, it's going to be Control Enter, and it'll execute your notebook. Okay, so we executed that. It says module not found because module not found, no module named chardet. So I actually need to install this. So let's go ahead and you can run commands from a notebook on the computer that the notebook's running on by doing a exclamation point or mark, and we can install chardet. And then I'm just going to exit because at this point, I don't want to execute the rest of it until after I've installed that on this machine that I'm running on, that Kaggle is kindly providing. Okay, so it's collecting chardet, downloading chardet, and hopefully this doesn't take too long. Successfully installed. Awesome. Okay, so it's still running. I don't know why it did this to me when I was testing this, but I'm going to get rid of these two lines, and I'm just going to stop this because it should work now. Okay, so now if I click inside here, oops, kernel restarting. Hopefully that doesn't mess up my installation of chardet, but I'm going to do Control Enter again, and let's execute this. And see what it thinks these text bytes are encoded as. By looking at the patterns of ones and zeros, it should give us a prediction. Pardon the delay. While that's running, we'll come back to it. Let me just open up another Kaggle. Actually, let's go to command line because I want to show you competitions. So if we do Kaggle, and this will work now because I have my API key in the right place. By the way, that API key, just in case for the curious, let's take a look at it. So if I do cat, it'll print the contents of a file. You usually only want to do this with text files. So it's really simple. It just has my username and some key that basically acts as a password to give me access to Kaggle's API. Okay, so Kaggle competitions, and we can list competitions. So competitions are a great way to learn how to do natural language processing, different machine learning activities. You can join these competitions. They have a lot of learning ones that are really great. They have research ones. They have ones that have prizes. Like if you look at the top ones, I think these are organized by the dollar amount, US dollars of the prize. Like just to not get your hopes up too much, you're not going to get this. So unless you work on a team and then you'll get like a section of it, you'd have to it's going to take some experience, but you could, I don't know, perhaps, I'm not giving any guarantees whatsoever. So, but perhaps you could get $1 just to set your expectations. But yeah, there are cash prizes. I don't know the feasibility of obtaining those, but typically you're going to succeed when you work as a team. But then there's these getting started just to learn things and different stats on these these different competitions. So you can go to the competition page. Some of them are permanent competitions, like this digit recognizer, and it's just for learning, really. And so you can read. It kind of preps you to learn how to join and participate in the rules of a competition. So kind of a mock competition to build your own digit recognizer, and just slowly learn. There's a lot of learning resources on Kaggle. Highly recommend it. And as I've been going through these resources and stuff, I notice there's a lot of cross references with machine learning and neural networks and stuff. So you'll find a lot of the same materials referenced on Kaggle or Hugging Face. So you can use really any of those. So let's go back and see if we've got awesome. So we have a prediction. This is what we printed right here. Our chardet detected these groups of ones and zeros. Bytes are 8 at a time. And it has a confidence of 72% that the encoding is ISO 8859-1. Okay, so let's go ahead and assume that that is our encoding and change this to read text and change the encoding to the one that was just detected. And we'll get rid of this line. And we'll print 50 characters and we'll call it a day, just of our first line. By the way, when you do competitions, I think depending on the rules, I think you either have to or it's certainly an option to use Kaggle notebooks, which is a nice convenience. And if you need to do like parallel computing, they actually give you free resources. You could change the settings. So an accelerator is like a processor that can do multiple, like faster parallel computations. So GPUs and TPUs are different types of accelerators that can do that for you. We're not using one currently, but those are optional things that you have just a fixed amount of time, but you can use for free on Kaggle as well if you get an account. If you don't like putting your email everywhere, just, I don't know, use your BYU email to set up a Kaggle account. So let's run this and see if our encoding's right and see if we succeeded. Okay, we get slight error, name text is not defined because I changed the name of that variable. So Control Enter to execute that without having to take my fingers off the keyboard. And there we go, our first line. One other error I didn't quite get to, but I want to wrap up this video and make it shorter, is that this technically is not XML because each doc tag and closing doc tag is like on separate lines. It's not wrapped in like an overall, like with HTML, you would have like what's called your root tag, HTML, which is a type of XML. And then you'd have like the body, for example, underneath that, and your body close tag and your HTML close tag all inside, hopefully formatted so you can read it nicely. So it doesn't do this. All it has, this particular data set, is just it has like your doc and your closing doc, and each one is outside of the other. They're not like all wrapped inside of a root tag like HTML is, which isn't like technically valid. I guess each individual like is valid XML, just very simple with a single tag. But yeah, so you'd have to solve that problem. Your Python XML built in, or you can pip install others like XML parsers to like organize and categorize this XML so you can work with it more easily. Anyways, it's gonna give you problems unless you figure out how to, and I'm sure there is a way. But thanks for watching this video, and I hope this helped you get excited, learn a little bit more about Kaggle opportunities. There's learning opportunities here, courses, lots of stuff you can do to start learning about this stuff. So have a great day.